Good morning, Morris, and thanks for speaking at the Business of Ageing conference. It's a pleasure to have you here. What, from your perspective, are the big challenges for Australia going ahead with an ageing population?
For me, one of the biggest challenges really is that we don't dream large enough. That what we're working towards is a very old anachronistic model of work that suited us perfectly for a couple of hundred years while we lived and worked through an industrial revolution model that required many hands on to come together at 9 o'clock, leave at 5 o'clock. A lot of the work was laborious and difficult, physically challenging, and after you've done that for 40 years, you kind of feel that you do want to rest. It made perfect sense in those days, but the way that we work, the sorts of work that we'll do, is changing and has changed irrevocably. The work we'll do into tomorrow, next decade and beyond, requires very, very different sorts of people. And the reality is that a lot of that work can be done by great people regardless of the age they are. And the notion of retirement for all sorts of reasons just doesn't make sense anymore. It's really a world of reinvention. One of the things I firmly believe is that we will live to 120, which gives us a retirement age, if we use that old lingo, a retirement age today of somewhere around 80 or 100. I mean, that's incredible. I also think the way we'll work is changing. We work very much about one job, one linear career. We talk today about a multitude of careers, a multitude of jobs, all of them working simultaneously. In other words, we're doing bits and pieces of things at one stage in the day, some other bits and pieces during the day, maybe taking some time off. I don't think we're going to necessarily work that 9 to 5. We're going to have a very different approach, but people of all ages will be undertaking some kind of revenue-making activity and some kind of pleasure activity for the longevity of their life.
So, what does government need to do about this, if anything? What does industry need to do about this, if anything?
It needs to get on board. We talk a lot about retirement age, and the government puts a lot of things in place, superannuation, all of those things are purposeful and useful. But the language, the conversations are all about some final point. It's almost like we go to a cliff top at a certain age, and at that point in time, we jump off the cliff, we become totally different human beings, and we go into some kind of support mechanism, government support, personal support. We go on to life support. And we don't want to live that way anymore. So my conversation always with governments and with employers of any age, of any industry, is that we need to think about who's best for that project, who's best for that task. We need to get away from ageism, sexism. I mean, all of those things are unnecessary. It really is about who's most purposeful to undertake that role, and that's the person who needs to be in that position.
So, is it an issue of market forces, or are there specific things that government can do to stimulate demand for older workers?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the government needs to relax about this superannuation, be more comfortable about the language around it, talk about it as being a nominal age, and put in place practices and procedures that makes it ordinary for people to continue, should they wish to, beyond the age that we have now. But I also think it's market forces. We know that we're getting to a position where we will have lots of people that can work, but we're still going to have underemployment. We're still going to have all sorts of things that we have not had to deal with before. A lot of the roles, a lot of the tasks, a lot of things that will need to be done into tomorrow's space can be done by people traditionally that wouldn't have been in the workforce 10 or 15 years ago. And from a market position, I believe that we're going to take those people back into our workforce, either temporary, contingent work, freelance, full-time, again, whatever's relevant to that situation.
So what you're saying is the traditional life course is disappearing, the sort of school work, retirement life course, that's the thing of the past.
It absolutely is. We lived in a very linear age. It was very easy when I grew up to be able to say the first 19, 18, 20 years of your life was dedicated to an education, then went into tertiary, went into some kind of a career, whatever that was. That career, that portion then would move into a 40-year workforce, maybe a bit of a sponge cake and a gold watch after that, and then into retirement. And unfortunately, 7 years later, for many of us, we disappeared off Earth. Those kind of linear activities really aren't part of tomorrow's landscape at all. It's very fluid, very different. As we've said already, longevity is much beyond that 7 years. Retirement's not something people want to do. Some people can't do it because they need to put more food on the table, all sorts of reasons. And I think they're valid. We should be allowed to continue to work as long as we're purposeful and useful. And if we're not, the marketplace will soon dictate that we're not valid and we're not purposeful anymore.
So, just one last question from me, Morris. So what's your prescription for industry? What's your prescription for government going forward? What are the things that they need to do to fix this issue?
We need to stop looking at the inputs and look at the outputs. Let's not be so concerned about age, let's not be so concerned about any of the things that have been necessary over this industrial revolution course. Let's think best about what it is that we require to get the work done, to get society built, to get all the things that we want as a population done, and to be more concerned about that and then understand who's best to do that regardless of age, regardless of gender, and to put those people into place and to allow the marketplace to dictate when that's necessary, allow governments to put a policy and practice in place that makes that easy enough to do, and we will change culture over time. As we sit here now, it's a difficult conversation. We've not been used to it in our workforces. As a futurist, I talk about 5-10 years from now, and I'm confident 10 years from now this conversation will be very, very different.